Well, good morning, everybody. It's Monday, and we're here again with McLean International. We have a different coach with us this morning. Her name's Ray Jean. She's been coaching with Linda and McLean International for quite some time. And without further ado, I want Ray Jean to introduce herself and just give her a really quick bio to everybody before we get into knowing your numbers. This is a really interesting topic. Most realtors and even businesses in general don't know their actual numbers. Like if I ran Young Realty without knowing my cost per agent, my overhead, my monthly income versus monthly expenses, if I didn't know that, it'd be very difficult to run any business. So in real estate, you as a realtor, you need to know your specific numbers. And Reggie's going to get into this, and I think it's a great topic and it's a great lesson. So I'm all super excited for it. So Ray Jean, please go ahead and start your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I am Regine Christopher, and everybody calls me RJ, and I've been a coach with McLean International since about 1998. I've also helped build several teams and manage those teams, and I've been the CEO of a large franchise brokerage. My specialty, I guess, is agents who want to take their business to the next level, and those agents who are building or revamping teams, which we've seen a lot here in Arizona over the past 6 years. A lot of agents had to downsize, and now they're having to take a look at their numbers to determine, is it time for me to take my team back up to where it was previously? And so I'm really, really happy to be asked to participate in today's webinar, Know Your Numbers. One of the things that I'm going to take you through with this is what I call the 7 key business vital signs for your business. And those vital signs are great for solo agents, agents with teams, and even broker owners of real estate brokerages. So let's get started. So I love John Maxwell. I have most of his books, and this the law of the scoreboard, comes from his book, The 17 Indisputable Laws of Teamwork. And basically what he's saying is, John talks about a team cannot win the game if they don't always know the score. And so you can imagine if a football team is out there playing and they have no idea what the score is at any given time. So to win your game of real estate business, you need to know what your score is at all times. And mid-year, right now in July, is really a great time to analyze your numbers. And what I'm going to show you is how to look at specific numbers to be able to check the health of your business. So those 7 key business vital signs are very useful to diagnose, and they tell you a lot about your business and what adjustments you'll need to make to increase your results in the months to come. And so we have all heard that the language of business is numbers. So what does that really mean? You are the CEO of your business. Every one of you, you are the CEO. And what a CEO is supposed to know are the numbers of their company. And so when I'm coaching with agents and we're talking about numbers and tracking, and they think they're very busy and too busy to know what their numbers are, I always ask them, if you were paying you a salary to be the CEO of your company, would you fire yourself? And so I think that is always a great question. So number one, financials, your profit and loss statement, you've got to look at that at least monthly. That's your scorecard for the month. Also, by looking at it monthly, that gives you 12 chances to make changes to your bottom line by the end of the year. There's nothing worse for an agent, I think, is to get to the end of the year and have no idea how much money they made and how much money went out, and if they were a profitable business, because we work really, really hard in this business. We deal with a lot, and especially over the past 5 or 6 years, it's been pretty difficult. So you're in this is a for-profit business, I'm sure, for every one of you. Number 2 is really taking the time to invest in annual business planning. I think October is the perfect month for that. It's before the holidays and it's before the end of the year. And if you do it in October, you've really got a 2-month head start on the coming year. And you want that head start because what a business planning session looks like, it takes some time. I would say it takes anywhere from 4 to 8 hours, depending on how big your business is and how big of a leap you want to take in growth. But during a business planning, you're going to sit down and you're going to say, okay, last year, the past 12 months, where did my business come from? And hopefully you've got systems in place to track this. How much came from my sphere of influence? How much came from the websites I'm paying for? How much came from, open houses? All the different lead sources that you have. You want to know how much those lead source costs and how much of your business came from that. And then you're going to really dissect it and say, okay, what worked and what didn't? The things that worked really well, guess what? You're going to do more of these next 12 months. The things that didn't work, that actually cost you money, you're going to scrap. And so then the second step of a business planning is to predict, where's my business going to come from this year, this coming year, because markets shift, don't they? I know it's shifted a lot here. It shifts about every 3 months right now here in Arizona. I'm located in the Phoenix area. And of course you're going to take a look at every expense and you're going to hold it accountable to giving you a return. If you have an assistant or a team, you're going to work on team building and find out what you need to become more synergistic and cohesive. All of those things you're going to cover in your business planning. You're going to set standards for your business. You're going to find out what systems you need to make life easier, because of course our goal is to make more money but work fewer hours. And all of that you do in your business planning. And then the budget. So everybody's probably going, oh, the budget. I don't want to work on the budget. That is so boring. I want you to look at your budget in a different way. I want you to look at your budget as if you no longer have expenses. You only have investments. And when you can do that and you realize that you're going to hold your money so accountable that every dollar that you invest is going to return a multiple of that number, it can get really, really exciting. And if anybody needs to know how to do a budget, basically you take what your estimated gross commission income is going to be for the year, and then all of your expenses are a percentage of that number. So you know exactly how much to spend on lead generation and salaries. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more at the end. I want to say, please set your budget at the end of the year. You can do it around October or November. And then I want you to stick to it. As realtors, we get calls probably every day with someone trying to sell us the latest and the greatest shiny object that's just going to change our business, do we not? I really liked being able to say, gosh, I'm sorry, that sounds fantastic. I've already got my budget set for this year. You can contact me in September if you like. That's when I'll be making adjustments. And it really helps yourself stay disciplined to your budget. And then one more note, I guess, is just making sure that you have a way to hold every dollar accountable to earning a multiple of itself, even salaries. That's a whole nother webinar. We can talk about assistants and what they should be adding to your bottom line, but just make sure your dollars are held accountable. And then finally, the number 4 is a mid-year review, which is kind of what we're talking about today. Now is the perfect time to do a mini business planning session. We're going to look at a lot of the same numbers, a lot of the same sources of business, and we're going to make tweaks, because many times the goals that we set last October and the plan that we put into place to hit those numbers has changed because the market has shifted. So now is the time to take a look at what we need to tweak for the rest of the year. And so that brings us to our first key business vital sign. So I hope you write this down. You always want to take a look at your income from listings as a percentage of your total GCI, and I may say GCI a lot, and what that stands for is gross commission income. And so an ideal business would have around 50% of your income coming from listings and around 50% of your income coming from buyers. And a lot of people will tell me when I bring that up, they'll say, yeah, but RJ, I only want to deal with listings. I do not want to drive buyers around for hours and hours and showing homes And I get that, I really do, and I'm not saying you're the one that needs to do it. And right off the bat, let me tell you, any way you want to set up your business model is great. That's one of the biggest benefits of being a real estate business person, is you get to do it the way you want to do it. I just want to point out a few things to help you make that decision. So listings are phenomenal, and that's why I want to focus on listings, because listings bring exposure for you. They bring buyer leads. When you have listings, you don't have to go out and beat the bushes for buyers anymore. People come to you. And they also bring more seller leads. There's lots of prospecting you can do around your sellers that are going to bring up seller leads. But like I said, buyers are important too, and I'm going to give you an example. Actually, I'll show you an example. I was working with a pretty big team, and they did $814,285 in gross commission income in 2011. And when I took a look at their business for 2012, they were right on target to have the same breakdown from their income. They were doing about 85% of their gross commission income came from listings, and about 15% of their gross commission income came from buyers. And so I've got the numbers on the screen. You can see what they made from each. But at the bottom in red is what they left on the table by not capturing buyers. So this obviously is an REO agent that we're looking at right now. And REO properties, actually, I think it was about 70% of our market a few years ago were lender involved, meaning they were short sales or REOs. And I'm not sure what your market has, but I'm sure you've heard of these things. And so he was an REO agent, and he did not focus on capturing the buyers from his listings. And so he left over $500,000 on the table. And to me, that's really, really painful. He could have gotten some buyer agents and maybe a lead coordinator and kept about half of that for himself. So to me, that's a big ouch. And
RJ, just a point on that. So can you be more specific on what you meant by left on the table? You mean the seller converting to a buyer themselves?
No. So, when you have listings, you get a lot of sign calls.
Right.
You get sign calls, you get web hits. There's tons of things you can do, open houses in your own listings. And for every listing, you should also be getting 2 more transactions. Maybe the buyer, hopefully, the buyer for that property, but at least a buyer coming in. We know that NAR says that it's less than 5% of the time that people will buy the house that they call on, but you are getting an incredible amount of buyer leads when you have a lot of listings. And so actually, I had the same, when I was running a brokerage, I was looking at my numbers, and I think at that point we had 61% of our company's income coming in for the month were from listings. And I showed it to my board of directors. I said, do you think this is good? And they said, well, yeah, you're always telling us to focus on listings. This is great. And I said, well, let me show you what it would have looked like if we had had 50% listings and 50% buyers. And what I found out was the agents themselves missed out on about $150,000 of income, and the company missed out on about $13,000 of income. And so we did a mastermind. We brainstormed. We said, okay, how are we missing buyers? How are we not capturing buyers? And what we determined was they were so focused on listings, they were just letting the buyer leads fall. If somebody called in on a lead that was under a certain price range, they just weren't even calling them back. There were a lot of things that they weren't doing to not capture those buyers. So we mastermind, we worked out that they would refer to each other, and the next month I was back in line. I was like at 55% listings, which is really good. So
That's great, yeah.
I
think most realtors, once they get that list, they're so focused on selling that home, they forget about, oh wait, there's more leads coming in as well I can deal with as well while this home sells itself.
Absolutely. And when it's a hot market, when it's a hot market and the houses are selling really fast, here the houses sell in hours right now. They forget that those listings are a marketing vehicle.
Yeah.
You want those signs. You want everything that has to do with those. You want the web presence. So, Yeah, it's great that the houses are selling in hours, and at the same time, it's pretty rough on our businesses out here. So, okay, where are we? All right, the next key business vital sign is all about listings. And like I said, we want to focus on listings. And so this slide, I want to walk you through it. We're going to start at the bottom, okay? So this vital sign, the rule of this vital sign is to always know the minimum number of seller listings needed to hit your income goal. So in this scenario, at the bottom you will see the goal is $100,000 total gross commission income. And we want 50% of that, or $50,000, to come from sold listings. So what I wanted to know was, how many listing appointments do I need to go on per month to make $50,000 of gross commission income from closed listings? So we just work it backwards. We take the $50,000 and we divide it by whatever your average commission rate is on listings. And we're going to come up with the amount of listing volume. In this case, it's 1.6 million in listing side volume. And then I'm going to divide that by your average sales price. And everybody's average sales price can be different. On this example, I divided it by 200,000. And that tells me I need 8.3 closed listings for the year. If I can close 8.3 listings at 200,000 with my average commission rate, I will earn $50,000 of gross commission income. Not every listing that I take, though, is going to close. Actually, here they do right now, but that's not always the case. So I figured in an 80% conversion rate, meaning I'm going to allow for 20% of my listings to not sell, or the sellers to change their mind or something like that. So when I divide 8.3 by 80%, I see that I need to take 10 seller listings. I need to take 10 to sell 8.3. Now, I don't get every single listing that I go on a listing presentation. So in this scenario, I factored in a 65% conversion rate. So I took 10 listings and I divided it by 65%, and I see that during the course of the next 12 months to make $50,000, I need to go on 16 listing appointments, or 1.3 per month. And I love going through this. This is called an economic model. I love going through this, and agents' eyes light up because they think that they've got this big goal, and then when they find out they only need 1 or 2 a month, it's incredible. So if you wanted to make $100,000 from listing site transactions and your average sales price is $200,000, you'd only need to take 3 listings per month. So I think that this is really exciting.
Yeah, that's very. We do that as well, RJ. We do. We give all the agents a business plan at the beginning of the year. We get them set goals as well. But like you said about the analogy of the football game, if you don't even know what the score is, how do you know you're winning or losing, right?
Exactly.
So most agents don't even get to this point of how many listing appointments they need, how many listings they need per month or per week. Once you know how many you need, it's easy to say, now where can I go and get that lead, or where can I go and get that appointment? Can I get it from my signs? Can I get it from referral? Do I have to go and do print marketing? Do I have to go and do direct mailing? So until you know what that number is, you don't know what to do in terms of marketing. So it's very important you actually do this exercise.
It really is, and they also get very overwhelmed because they don't know how actually easy it is. 1.3 per month, that's just a listing appointment. You don't even have to take 1.3 listings a month. You just need to find somebody raising their hand saying, I'm thinking about selling, come over and talk to me about it.
Exactly. And another important point on this graphic is that you got the average selling price of $200,000. In Toronto, it's almost triple. So we're 540,000 is the average price right now in Toronto. And our commissions on average around 2.5. So it's a little bit different. But that being said, we'll need a lot less appointments to get to the same number.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, that's exciting. I love your average sales price.
Yeah.
Now, the next thing to do on your listings is to make sure you're not missing any market opportunities. So what I always like to do is find out what's my market. So going into the MLS and finding out now you definitely, that's great that you're in Toronto. Here we look at what percentage of the market are short sales, what percentage are equity sales. We might look at what percentage is relocation or second homes, And you want your business to match the market. You want to make sure you're not missing out on anything. And I think that's a point that a lot of agents miss as well. All right, looking at your sphere of influence. Positively, the very best place to get business because the people already know you and trust you. They don't haggle with us on our commissions. We don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops. It doesn't cost much to get a referral from our sphere or to sell to our sphere and past clients. However, I get concerned when I hear agents tell me that 85–90% of their business comes from their sphere of influence or their Met database. That's okay if that's what you want. I just don't think that you're going to get the growth that most agents want to see year after year by only getting business from your sphere of influence. I think it's limiting. I think that it's allowing your marketing dollars to be lazy. And I think at worst you're probably missing opportunities. And then on the flip side, I see agents that are getting practically no business from their sphere. And that to me probably is worse because it's a gold mine. Having a database is the best thing you can do for your business. That is your business, actually. Having a database and consistently feeding it is the most important thing you can do to continually grow your business. And so you want to make sure that you're getting the return from your database, and the only way to do that is to track it. So you want to know that number. Now, this is these are just fake numbers that I've put in here, but this is a very interesting thing to do. The fourth key business, or the fifth key business vital sign is tracking your lead source percentages and tracking your closed source percentages and comparing the two. So what you're seeing on the screen are many different ways that an agent may get leads, and basically there's a spreadsheet and you just put in numbers every week of the leads that you're getting in the different areas, so you can see how many leads you're getting in the different sources. And then it becomes a percentage. So in this example, sign calls are 22% of the leads that this agent is getting. And then we're going to drop down and look at sales. This agent has sold 24 homes that came from sign calls, or roughly 12% of the sales. There's actually a line here missing. What I like to see is I also like to see what is the conversion percentage from leads to sales from the sign calls. And what this tells you about your business is if an agent has a high percentage of leads coming in from sign calls, but they have a very low percentage of sales coming from sign calls, what does that tell you? That tells you probably have a script issue because you're not converting the sign calls. Once you've been in the business for a while, you know that sign calls, at least here, are probably aside from your sphere of influence, are the best leads that you're going to get. And so you should have a fairly high conversion rate on your sign calls. And if you don't, it's probably just a matter of what you're saying to the people on the phone. If you're giving them the price right away and letting them off the hook, there's the problem. And so you're going to be able to look at all of your different sources of leads and look how they compare to your sources of sales. And I learned this a long time ago. I got in the business when I was just a teenager, and I was very fortunate to be mentored by top agents. We went on to build their team, and they had a billboard, and they would get about 400 leads per month from the billboard. And then when we started tracking our sales, we didn't have any sales. And I thought that's really interesting because that was our most expensive form of advertising at the time. And so that lesson really struck home to me.
Yeah, RJ, it's an incredible point. I think it's very important for the agents listening. If you look at these numbers, a lot of the conversations I have with our realtors is, where do the leads come from? What other ideas can I get for lead generation? On this page alone, this is a great starting point. I'm not sure how many you have here, maybe 20 different lead sources. But if your lead generation system is costing you money, ongoing, monthly, or weekly, or whatever it is you're paying, and you're getting zero return on that, that's a very poor return on your investment. You really have to sit down and say, is it important for me to have this lead generation service? Is it important to be in the yellow pages that's costing me money every single month if it does nothing for my business? if you really fine-tune these numbers and sit down and take the time, you'll understand you don't have to spend that much money to generate the leads you need to create the income you want. So that's why I think it's an incredible exercise to do this.
It is, and it's really, really simple. It's just a matter of making hash marks on a piece of paper, and
That's
then
right.
every week just putting them into Excel. The reason I like to do it weekly is because well, where did I learn this? Now I don't remember where I learned this. I've picked up stuff over the years, but you always want to, if you're going to tweak your marketing, you only want to make one change, and then you want to see what happens.
That's
So
right.
basically, I have this is my lead source tracker, and basically every week of the year is on the left-hand side, and then I just make little hash marks under each source. If I were to make a change, like let's say I changed, I went to the featured version, the enhanced version of Realtor.com one week, I would highlight the box of the week where I made the change, and then I would watch what would happen afterwards. So you always want to see where the changes are and see what happened. If you have a negative result, for heaven's sakes, change it back.
Yeah.
And you only want to change one thing at a time. And this little spreadsheet, you fold it up, stick it in your pocket, put it in your purse, put it in your briefcase, just carry it with you at all times and make the little hash marks.
Absolutely.
Otherwise you're just throwing money up in the air, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and you're hoping it sticks and it works, right? You don't,
Yeah.
that's a poor way to run any business. One of the challenges as well is that I always talk about these non-productive activities and productive activities, MPAs and PAs, and we did an exercise last week where I asked everybody to write down what they do in a single day, and what the results were coming back. There's a lot of time spent doing nothing, and there's a lot of time spent doing non-productive activities towards your sales. So a lot of time when you're writing this down, it may seem as though you're not being productive, but once you start analyzing the numbers, it becomes one of the most vital parts of any business. It doesn't matter if you're selling real estate or you're selling socks or you're selling pens, whatever it is. If you don't know the numbers of your business, you're just going to continue to spin your wheels. And one of the challenges with this as well, a lot of realtors say, well, how do I know where the leads are coming from? You have to ask. At the end of the day, the lead comes in through a phone call. You don't know where they've got your number from. So when I was selling real estate, the first question out of my mouth was, how do you hear about me? And it's like, oh, I heard from a friend, or it was I saw an ad in the newspaper, or I saw your website, or whatever it was. That is when you start tracking the numbers. You have to ask where they've got your number from, or information from.
Absolutely. And sometimes you have to ask them more than once, too.
That's right, yeah.
Drill down, yeah. There's no such thing as a floor call,
Yeah.
People, they found you somehow, unless their car broke down in front of your office or something. So you definitely want to drill down. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Now, here we go. This is exactly what you were just saying. The next thing I would want to look at as a business person is how well am I staying in my 20%? So everyone has heard of Pareto's principle, I'm sure.
I'm always harping on Pareto's principle. In Toronto, and I find in real estate in general, it's actually 90-10, right? 90% of the business, but 10% of the agent.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at those 10%, they know their numbers inside and out. They can sit down with you in 5 minutes and tell you exactly where everything comes from.
Right. And what do you think that this is the biggest issue that agents have, though, is controlling their time?
100%, yeah.
Yeah, and they're not lead generating because, oh my goodness, I've got to deal with this inspection report first thing this morning.
That's right.
No, I think actually all we have to do is just set up our expectations with our client. I just had this conversation last week with an agent, and I was talking to her about her commitment to her lead generation time in the morning, and she was giving me excuses that an inspection report came in the previous night, and she told her client she would call them first thing in the morning. And I said, well, there was your mistake. You made your mistake last night.
Mm-hmm.
You have an appointment with yourself every morning. They don't need to know what the appointment is. But the conversation would have been better had it been said, I have an appointment in the morning. I'll be free at 11, and you'll be my first phone call, and we'll go over this inspection report together. I just think that sometimes we make it harder than it needs to be. And the funniest thing I've ever heard was I was at a convention somewhere, and I popped into quote-unquote time management class, and the person who was running the class pulled out his day timer, and he had actually cut out 9 to 11, so he couldn't write anything in there every day. And I thought, no, that's discipline.
Yeah,
and then I've heard another realtor say that his job, he has one job in his real estate business, and that is to show up and follow his schedule every day. And that's awesome.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so this is hard. I'm not going to lie to you. This is not easy. This has to become a habit. There are lots of different ways you can do it. I think the very best way to do it is to get a peer partner to go over your weekly activities with you. So you meet on Friday and you say, here's what I said I was going to do last week, and here's what I got done. Here's what got in the way. This is how I'm going to protect my time in the coming week because these are my big rocks for the coming week. And then again on Friday you get back together and say, I know we talked about what my big rocks are. These are the ones I did. Again, this is what got in the way. And now here's my plan for protecting my time for the next week. And I think this is probably one of the best things you can do for your business is just staying in your 20% and recognizing when you're out of it.
Yeah, see, one of the things about real estate, it's the best thing why probably most people join the business is there's no accountability, right? So you can sort of show up for work when you want, set your own schedule, you go on vacation whenever you want. It's great, right? The challenge with the real estate, though, is there's no accountability. So you don't, you're not committed to yourself. You're not disciplined enough. So with real estate, and I always use the example when I was playing professional football, nobody wants to get up at 7 in the morning and work out and run until they fall down on the ground because they're so tired. Nobody wants to do that. I didn't want to do that. But I had an accountability person. I had a coach. I had someone like yelling at me and doing it, right? So that's why you do it. So in real estate, same thing. You need an accountability partner, whether it's a friend, a colleague, whether you have to pay someone to be your coach, whatever it is, you need someone there to make you accountable for what you're trying to accomplish at the end of the year.
Yes, and sometimes it's pretty tough. I can tell you, of course, I have a coach as well. And my coach, when I was not protecting my time, this is when I was running that brokerage, and recruiting was, my 20%. And I didn't like making those phone calls especially. And week after week, I was letting things get in the way of my calling, just like real estate agents. He said, who is the person in the world you would least like to give money to? And I'm like, oh, that's easy. And I told him the person and why. And he said, great, take out your checkbook. And I said, what? And he said, I want you to write a check for $5,000 to that person and send it to me with his name and address. And I said, no way. And he said, well, he said, I'll only mail it if you don't make your calls, if you don't stick to your schedule. And I said, no way, I'm not sending you a check for $5,000. And he said, RJ, you're not committed to making your calls. I said, yes, I am. And he said, no, you're not. If you were committed, that check could be $1 million. But you know it's not going to get sent because you've made your calls. And so sometimes accountability is pretty tough. What I would do with my agents is I would have them bring their calendar in every week, and I would look for the lead generation times. And we would assign dollar amounts to those times. And I would look for things like going to their son's soccer game or their daughter's dance recital. And I would actually assign a higher dollar amount to those times, because a lot of times I worked with people that I almost felt like sometimes I had to help them, stay a little bit more balanced and happy. And we would assign dollar amounts. And if they didn't do that activity when they were supposed to do it, they would write those checks to their favorite charity. And I usually only had to do that for about a week. And then the habits kicked into play. So, I mean, depending on how committed you are, that you may want to ask for that type of help. I know that's scary. Everybody's probably just hung up from the call now. And then finally, the last key vital sign is the bottom line. So the purpose of business is to fund the perfect life. That's the whole reason we're in business, unless you're just a crazy person and you just love all the issues that we deal with day to day. We are business owners because we want to fund the perfect life, and you just can't do that getting a salary. So it's, at the end of the day, it's not about how much money you make, it's about how much money you keep. And top agents know what the percentages should be for cost of sale, expenses, and profit. And if you do that as a percentage, the funny thing is that even as your business grows and goes from one stage to the next, and your actual costs are very different from one stage to the next, your percentages really are not that different. And so that's why I like to set goals as percentages of gross commission income rather than just hard costs. And so I am a big fan of the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. There's a budget model in there, and it talks about what some industry standards are for expenses. And so they're on this slide. Cost of sale 30%, expenses 30%, which would hopefully leave you with 40% gross profit. And it's gross profit because you still have to take taxes out and everything. So if you take a look at this, we've got salaries at 12% of your gross commission income, lead generation, which I think, like I said before, everybody seems to be too high in salaries and too low in lead generation, all the way down to, you know, supplies and auto and insurance. So as you do your budget, you know, make sure you're taking a look at percentages and not just coming up with, oh, well, last year I spent X amount on salaries, I guess that'll be my budget for this year. No, you want to make sure that you're staying in line and that you're following a business model that you really want to follow. So,
yeah. So on that note, so it is. I've read the book myself, Millionaire Real Estate Agent. It's a good book. What you got to remember though is if that book did work, you know, Gary Keller and Keller Williams has about 80,000 realtors around the world now. They should have 80,000 millionaire real estate agents, but they just don't. What did they miss out in on that book is these numbers are fantastic. But if you don't take the time to sit down and physically do it, and you don't take the time to actually take the action, then it'll never happen. So it doesn't matter what book you read or what presentation you listen to or whatever webinar you're associated with. If you don't take this information and do something with it, right? So this goes back to the knowing doing gap, right?
right.
Take this information and put it into place. Put it into action today. If you have time today, take an hour out of the day and just set the budget. I know it's important to do it later on in the year for the next calendar year, but if you haven't done it this year, just do like a really quick budget, do a quick analysis of your business from last year. If you're new in business this year, just create one. Okay, even if you don't think what the numbers are going to be correct, just make it up anyways. Okay, so that's why it's really, really important. And one of the other points to note is that if you are having difficulty with taking these action steps, maybe now is the time to sit down and say, maybe I should hire somebody to do the things I don't want to do. Maybe I should hire someone to make my, you know, follow-up phone calls to my sellers. You know, that's a sort of thing you need to really sit down and think about.
Absolutely. And I think the reason that there's, you know, this book isn't just for Keller Williams, it's for everybody. It starts with the gross commission income, and if people aren't willing to do what they need to do as far as prospecting, managing their time so they get the big rocks, getting accountability, none of this other stuff is going to matter. So you've got to do what it takes. You know, we're all in the lead generation business. You know, we don't sell real estate. Our first job is to generate leads, and you have to cut out the time for that. You have to have a plan for that, and you have to know which systems work to actually get the leads.
I agree.
Yep. And so that is the information that I have for you today. I know it's a lot, and when we talk about numbers, it's kind of hard to do that with just one little screen, so I'm very open to answering any questions that you have.
Yeah, numbers are never really anybody's favorite topic to sit down and discuss. It doesn't matter what business you're in, but it is probably the most vital. It really is the pulse of your business. Like if you look at any big company, like Apple, for example, their number one thing is accounting. They probably spend more money in that than anything. And it's just because they need to know where the money's coming from, how to generate more money. Like if you have a chartered accountant or just accountant in general, they are a great resource to go to. You know, even if you have to spend a little bit of extra money to sit down and take them to lunch, take them to dinner and say, how can I make my business more profitable? Like my real estate accountant, all he does is realtors, like specific to real estate salespeople's a book. So he knows, like he's always told me, you know, you need to do, you know, 10% more in marketing, and you can really shrink down this area in salaries because they're not giving you a return on your investment. And so they're a great revenue source or a great idea source to speak to and sit down with. So if you don't like the numbers, your accountants, they love numbers.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
So it's just a nice little tip to take away from this as well. If you're finding yourself struggling with the numbers, if you're bad with math, if you just don't know what percentages to think about, ask somebody else. Ask a real estate specific accountant. That's a great tool. That's what I used when I was starting out. And ask other realtors. Go look at some of the top producers in your local neighborhood and see what they're doing.
Absolutely. And you know, they have some very easy software depending on where you are in your business. I'm all for outsourcing somebody to take care of, you know, to provide financials for you every month. You know, send them your expenses, send them your income, you know, the HUD one or whatever. and let them figure out and give you a report of how much you're spending in each of the categories. But have it done, even if you have to pay for it. It's critical.
Absolutely. So I'm going to open the floor now. Everybody's mic is off. I'm going to unmute everybody.
Okay.
So if you have a question you can ask, the lines are open. You can write it in the little box on the right where it says chat. You can ask questions. Arju is a great resource. We got some more time here with her. So if you have any questions, even if it's outside of just the numbers, please ask now. Okay, see, RJ, I told you, they're shy. I think either that or we've answered all the questions that they had. Okay.
That must be it. Yeah. That must be it.
All right.
I have really enjoyed being on the webinar with you. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope that you will ask me to do it again.
Hey,
great.
RJ.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so my internet got cut out when you were saying you got to find the person that you least want to give money to, and then you got to do what?
Oh, yeah, that's I had some tough love from my coach, and he had me write a check. I'll tell you, it was to my ex-husband, and if I did not make a certain amount of calls the following week, he was going to mail that check to my ex-husband. And what it told me was, when I didn't want to send him the check, was that I really wasn't committed to making those calls. Because if I was, and I knew that there was no way I was going to miss making those calls, I could have written that check out for $1 million and sent it to him. And so it was really eye-opening to me. And I'll tell you, he settled for a little bit less amount, and I made my calls that next week.
Yeah, so, Sarvesh, we were talking about accountability and trying to figure out how we can make the agents accountable for their business. Because this is one of the most important parts of any business are these numbers. And how do you do your lead generation? How many calls you have to make? How many appointments you have to set? It's super, super important.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, one question. Okay, perfect. So, RJ, that's it for today. We're going to wrap it up. Thank you for your time, and we will see you guys, Linda McLean, next month.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.